Hey guys, it's Amber from Notable Ink. Today I'm sharing a hack. It's a little bit of a cheat on the ink and wash technique. Instead of sketching, we're going to watercolor stamp and we're going to reinforce that with the brand new fine liners from Altenew. I'm also going to do a little bit of swinking, and we have a brand new craft apron to share as well. There's so much to share today. This is part of the Twinkle and Shine blog hop and giveaway, so be sure to follow my link down below and leave a comment on my blog for a chance to win. Let's take a closer look at this amazing craft apron. This is such a pretty apron, you guys. I love the images that they chose and the colors that they chose. They have complementary colors on here with the blue and the orange, so it just totally pops off the apron, and I think it's just stunning. So if you are in the market for an apron, then this is perfect for you guys. Of course, this is perfect for all of us who are Altenew educators. This is something that you'll probably see us wearing once we get back to those in-person workshops, and maybe even in the Zoom workshops as well. So you can see all of the images here. I had to zoom out pretty far to get the whole thing in the film. I kind of want wall decals of this image to put up in my craft room. I think that would be really pretty. Okay, for our first card, we're going to be using Eucalyptus Jar Stamp Set, and this is such a great set, you guys. I can already tell that this one is going to be filed away in my sentiments section versus my floral section, because there are some great sentiments in here, you guys. So you can see you get the lovely jar, and it's one single stamp, which makes it really easy to stamp. And as you saw, loads of sentiments. So I have the Altenew Artist Watercolor Pan set here, and I'm going to pick out a few colors. You can see that the set is well used, but I still have tons of paint left. It would take me a lifetime to get through all this paint. So I have shades of purple, Pocket Full of Sunshine, Seashore, and Fall Harvest here. I do end up picking out a blue as well, but what I want to mix is a Silver Dollar Eucalyptus leaf color. I'm pretty sure that's lapis lazuli there. So I just used Seashore, a little bit of that lapis lazuli, a little bit of the Fall Harvest. I'm going to put a little more Seashore in there, and I'll just keep mixing until I get the color that I like. That's the shade that I want, and I just added a dropper full of water so that I can water it down a little bit more so it's a super light mixture. I have a piece of watercolor paper in my mini Misty here, and I'm just going to pick up that pigment and put it right onto the stamp. We're going to do watercolor stamping because, again, I wanted to have that ink and wash look, which ink and wash is when you sketch a design and you watercolor, or sometimes you might sketch it in pencil, then go ahead and watercolor it. Or some people may sketch it and then go ahead and add the ink, the fine liner to it before they watercolor. Either way is good, but we're going to kind of cheat the process, and instead of sketching it, we're going to use this stamp, but it's going to look like an ink and wash project in the end. So I just added a little Fall Harvest to that lapis lazuli up there, and just I wanted to neutralize the blue a little bit so that it wasn't too light, or too bright rather, and I went ahead and stamped the jar with that. Now I'm going to go in and add my water. So I'm just wetting the paper first so that it's a wet on wet technique. And I'm going to drop in some of this blue. I'll use a little bit of the blue mixture. You can see I'm letting it mix with my green mixture. I think it'll be pretty to have a little bit of the green kind of floating around in there. And then I'll also, after this dries a little bit, I'll add a little bit of that yellow, because I'm actually going to use that neutralized yellow as the tabletop. So I'll show you that later. I'm using a little bit of that blue and kind of tracing the stamped area with my brush. So it's going to make a couple of the areas a little bit darker. I wanted a little more color variation in the hue here. I wanted to reinforce the bottom of the jar so that was more noticeable. And so I'm just kind of emphasizing a few areas. I'm also going to put a little bit of that darker blue into the water here so that it looks a little more ripply. And then I'm going to color in some of these leaves. I'm not going to color them in fully. So I'm using that same green pigment that I used to stamp with. And I'll just slightly fill these in, leaving a little bit of a highlight at the tip of it. I'll come in with a darker green. So I added just a little bit of a darker hue to that, and I'm going to add a shadow at the base of the leaves. But really very loose, you guys. I'm not trying to go for realism. I'm not trying to have a lot of detail to this. I'm just kind of slapping the color on there and getting a little bit of variation in the color. I'll reinforce the stems. And then I let this dry just for a couple minutes. I didn't want it to be totally dry. So here I'm just wetting where I want the tabletop to be, so I can do a wet on wet technique, and I'm just dropping in that neutralized yellow that I have there. And I'll just drop that in, and then I'm going to come in with more pigment of it and kind of darken it up. So I'm going to add layers of it so that I can create a shadow from the glass. And off camera, I realized that I also needed this yellow color inside the jar. So where you see those white areas, and I didn't film that part, but where you see those white areas right now inside the jar where the water is, I added a little bit of yellow to that because you would see that through the jar. So there you can see it's just slightly yellow. So I'm just going to darken up those areas. And if you follow me, you know none of my cards are complete without splatter. So I'm using the same paints that I colored the image with and just splattering that on. If you splatter before it's dry, then those are going to blend into your image. If you let it dry, then you'll have very distinct droplets of color. So it really just depends on your preference. Here is the 01 Fine Liner by Altenew. This panel is completely dry now, and I'm just going to go and add incomplete lines. So I don't want to completely outline the shape. I'm just adding some incomplete sketchy lines, a little bit of the stem, and I'm going to do this throughout the entire eucalyptus and then also the jar. And this is going to give you that ink and wash look without having had to draw this all on your own. Kind of just copying the shapes is really pretty easy to just outline and trace them, but drawing this on your own would be much more difficult. That being said, if you're interested in learning how to sketch, this is actually a good way to practice. You can do something like this and kind of get used to drawing botanicals this way, and it's a great way to practice. So if you're interested in that, this is maybe a good place to start. As I said, this video is part of the Altenew Release blog hop, and so you want to follow the link down below and leave a comment on my blog for a chance to win a gift card to shop Altenew. Definitely a gift card to shop is going to come in handy with the holidays coming up. I can't believe we're already getting ready for the holidays. And if you're enjoying this video and you want to see more inspiration like this, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Also hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of my new uploads. All right, we're about done with the sketching, and I love how that looks. Let's take a closer look at the fine liners. So there are 4 pens in the set. One of them is a brush nib, so it can go from a super fine point to very, very thick. And so this is perfect for your lettering. And you can see how thin you can get on the upstroke and how thick on the downstroke. So that is a lovely pen. The next pen is a 02, so that's the next thickest pen compared to the brush liner. Then you have a 01, and the finest pen is the 005, super, super fine liner. I forgot to add my details to the jar, so I'm just going back in with that 01 pen and adding a few kind of sketchy lines here and there just to reinforce the top of that jar lid and then also the bottom of the jar as well. These pens are archival, light fast, and waterproof, so you can use them before you watercolor as well. Here's the finished card. Take a look at all the color variation you can achieve by several layers of watercolor. Even when the pigments are really watered down like mine were, you can get such a great variation in color. For the next card, we're going a little more graphic with this card. I have the striped circle stamp set. This is an awesome stamp set. I love stripes. I especially love black and white stripes. It's kind of my jam. I love it. Of course, in the trifold, you have some great suggested pairings and then also some inspiration. So this set includes a background stamp with a window and then also a strip of stripes that you can use individually, which I think is awesome. So I have these seashore inks here, so I'm keeping everything in the same color family today because you know how I like it when my cards coordinate in the final photos. So So I'm doing some swinking here with the Seashores color family, and that was a term that was coined by Laurel Beard for direct-to-paper inking. So you're swiping and inking the paper at the same time, so you're swinking. And so you can see I'm not taking any care. I'm not worrying about if there's harsh lines anywhere. I'm not too worried about how it's blending because I'm going to throw a whole bunch of water splattered onto this paper. Now, this isn't even watercolor cardstock. This is just Neenah Classic Cross Solar White. This is the 80 pound. Actually, it might be 110 pound. It might be the thicker one. But I just have a number 12 round brush here. I am loading it up with water and putting some huge splatters on there. I think I started with an 8 round to get some smaller spots, but you can see these spots are really big. I'm using a microfiber cloth to just blot up some of that water, and I'm going to let that completely dry. It's funny because when you feel the cardstock, because it's not watercolor cardstock, it almost, you can feel the texture of all of the water droplets because it kind of beads up the cardstock a little bit. It's a really cool texture. It almost feels embossed. So after it's dry, I'm going to load the stamp into my Misty, and I kind of just rubbed my hand over it to condition it. You really don't have to do much conditioning if you're using the Obsidian pigment ink. It stamps well all the time. I am going to stamp it twice because it is such a large stamp. I want to make sure I get good coverage everywhere. I'm going to use my tweezers to pick this back up because I don't want to get ink on my hands. So I'll let that dry, but I just think that's a really cool look, you guys. I love the ombre effect, and with those really big and large white drops, I love it. I thought it went really well with Make Today Sparkle, which are sentiments from that set. I went ahead and pulled out some white satin sequins, and I'll go ahead and adhere those down. I won't have you watch me arrange them all because we would be here for an eternity, you guys. Literally an eternity. It takes me forever. So here's the final card with the sequins, and I just love how it turns out. I think it's really cool having the droplets behind the stripes, so you get two patterns going on here. There's so much you can do with this stamp set, and I'm excited to see how all of the designers used it. Here's a third card that I made with the Sparkle stamp set, and you can see that I used that individual stamp with the stripes. I did some simple masking and layer stamping with the Seashores inks, and I used limestone, I believe, for the leaves. I added a sentiment from the set and just kept it clean and simple. I would love to know what you think about today's cards. If you think that you're going to try this ink and wash hack, let me know down below. Is that something that you're excited to try? Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you real soon with more inspiration.